The Russian army is actively strengthening its positions in Russian-annexed Crimea in case of military action against the Ukrainian Defense Forces. In the region, ahead of the resort season, massive minefields are being installed along the coast, according to the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Meanwhile, Russian authorities in Crimea have stepped up the recruitment of contract soldiers into the Russian army. Crimea.Realities reports on what's happening on the Crimean Peninsula while Russia is at war with Ukraine. Crimea.Realities continues to monitor the situation on the Crimean Peninsula during Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In the spring, the Ukrainian Defense Forces intensified strikes against Russian military installations in the region. The Russian military, in turn, has stepped up operations in the region. Russian units are conducting large-scale mining of the coast and nearby waters in Crimea in an attempt to prevent a possible Ukrainian landing, Vladislav Voloshin, spokesman for the Southern Ukrainian Defense Forces, told reporters in April. According to him, Russian units, in particular the Crimea Operational Tactical Group, are installing minefields along the coast. He noted that mining covers not only beaches, but also coastal waters, for which anti-tank and anti-personnel mines are used. Hundreds and thousands of mines are being installed in Crimea, supplemented by barbed wire, effectively turning the coast into a solid danger zone, asserts Vladislav Voloshin. They're trying to mine almost the entire coastline, laying hundreds, even thousands, of mines. The beaches will now be turned into minefields, which will be blocked with various barbed wire fences, and this applies not only to the beaches but also to parts of the sea. They're closing everything off because they're very afraid of a landing in Crimea, said Vladislav Voloshin. Russian authorities and military command have not publicly announced such measures. Crimea is actively preparing for the resort season and inviting Russian tourists to the peninsula. In previous years, Russian troops also organized the defense of the Crimean coast against the Ukrainian Defense Forces using trenches and fortifications. They were primarily concentrated on the western coast. In the spring, the Ukrainian Defense Forces intensified strikes against Russian military facilities in Crimea because they were able to break through a window in Russian air defense, Pavlo Lekichuk, head of security programs at the Strategy XXI Center for Global Studies, told. He added that this window will be exploited while it's open, which is why Ukrainian strikes against Russian military facilities in Crimea are intensifying. Local Russian authorities are seeking ways to protect Russian military installations from Ukrainian attacks. Civilian employees on the Crimean Peninsula may be called upon to perform military duties. Problems with Russian air defense units have arisen in the region, according to public accounts of pro-Ukrainian partisan movements operating in Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine. Russian authorities in Crimea are preparing to form mobile fire teams consisting of government officials and employees of public sector enterprises, the pro-Ukrainian movement Oppor claims, citing its sources. According to the group, instructions have been issued to the heads of Russian administrations and organizations under their control, and lists of people planned to be recruited for such response teams have already been compiled. The reason for this feverish self-organization is simple. Russian air defense in Crimea is demonstrating low effectiveness against Ukrainian drones, and over the past month, a significant portion of the air defense assets have been hit or destroyed by UAV strikes of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, the statement said. Russian authorities and its military leadership have made no statements about this. Security company personnel may be among those likely to be called upon to repel air attacks in the region. Russian President Vladimir Putin granted them this authority when he signed a law in March permitting private security personnel to carry combat-grade firearms while guarding critical infrastructure facilities and to use them to suppress the operation of drones. Russian authorities in Crimea have stepped up efforts to recruit contract soldiers into the Russian army, including among students and school graduates. Young people, including those from the occupied Kherson region adjacent to Crimea, are being recruited for military training. In April, they were sent to tactical training in Bakhchizere, organized by the Regional Center for Preparation for Military Service and Military Patriotic Education and the regional branch of the All-Russian Military Patriotic Public Movement UNARMIA. The training program included 8 areas: tactical and fire training, UAV control, first aid, mountain high altitude and airborne training, buggy control, and drill training, according to the organizers. Representatives of the Occupation Administration have sent teenagers and young adults from the Kherson region to the so-called Storm Crimea 2026 Tactical Training School in Bakhchisarai. Under the guise of training, the occupiers continue to systematically prepare Ukrainian children for participation in the war, the Yellow Ribbon Movement claims. Sergei Aksionov makes no secret of the fact that young Crimeans are being prepared for military service in the Russian army during its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Behind the dry phrase, preparing citizens for military service, there's actually a great deal of work. First and foremost, this involves instilling a love for the motherland and a willingness to defend it, a respectful attitude toward our national history, and toward those in uniform. Our shared goal is to improve the effectiveness of preparing young people for military service. Crimea is committed to finding optimal solutions for developing educational programs and implementing new forms and methods. The younger generation needs personal example and a societal atmosphere where each young person understands that their role is significant and that Russia truly needs them, he states. To attract new troops to the Russian army in Crimea, the one-time payment for contracts with the Russian Ministry of Defense has been increased to 1.2 million rubles. Previously, the offer was 800,000 rubles. Russian authorities in Crimea also promise monthly cash payments and additional benefits for participating in Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Occupation Administration is actively promoting such proposals, attempting to attract new contract soldiers, using financial incentives as the main argument. At the same time, according to available information, this is not only a matter of voluntary recruitment but also a continuation of the practice of illegal mobilization in the temporarily occupied territory. Despite promises of high payments, it is known that more than 2,000 Crimean residents have already died in the war against Ukraine. This indicates significant losses and raises questions about the real cost of such social guarantees. This policy is an attempt to compensate for the shortage of personnel and attract new combatants through financial incentives, the Crimean Tatar Resource Center states. Previously, Russian authorities promised that Crimeans conscripted into the Russian army would not participate in Russia's military operations against Ukraine. In reality, they are actively being sent to the front, both as part of the Russian army and as part of private military units. Crimea has one of the most advanced Russian mobilization systems among all the Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine, claims Yevgeny Aron, a representative of the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. According to him, Crimea conscripts the largest number of people into the Russian Armed Forces, approximately 5,000 annually. The exact number of Crimeans killed fighting against Ukraine remains unknown. Crimean.Realities has identified at least 2,000 Russian servicemen from the Crimean Peninsula killed during the fighting against Ukraine. This data is incomplete, as many fallen soldiers are buried privately on the Crimean Peninsula. The Ukrainian presidential representative in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea reports the deaths of at least 3,000 Russian service members from units stationed in Crimea. Of these, 1,500 were likely Ukrainian citizens, the agency notes.